Hello, this is Dr. Brandon again. And in this set of slides, the last set about the problem of evil, we're going to be talking about the nature of good and evil a little bit. And let's dive in here with the first slide. What does it mean to be morally good? What does it mean to be good in a moral sense? And Augustine and Mackey both believed that to be morally good means to do the maximum amount of good that one can do. They both think that if there is an omnipotent, all good being, that being would have to create the best possible world. Couldn't create the second best, have to create the best. So if you're all good, you do the most good. That's the idea. Augustine argues that this is the best possible world, and Mackey argues that this is not the best possible world. But they are in agreement about what it means to be good, it seems. But this runs into a problem, and there's a problem with possible worlds. St. Augustine's arguing this is the best possible world, but that means there has to be one world that's at the top and infinitely many below it. But what if there's infinitely many worlds below, but also for each world infinitely many above? What if infinity, like on a number line, right? Negative and positive integers goes both ways. Then no world can be the best world, like no number can be the largest number or the smallest number. So that's not going to work. So that's the problem. And so, how can God create the best in such a situation? So, one way to deal with this kind of a problem is to go back and think about what it means to be good. And there are many alternative theories, and one that the philosopher Robert Adams looks at is virtue ethics. And virtue ethics holds that to be good is to be virtuous. So if you ask, what would a good person create? Instead of saying the best, you got to think, what would a virtuous person create? That's really the question. And one way to think about that is to think about what you would do if you could create something. And of course, we can't create creatures out of nothing, but we can breed animals. We do it all the time, plants and animals. So think about breeding a dog. What kind of a dog would you breed? Would you breed the best kind of dog? What if you like basset hounds? I don't think too many people are going to argue that a basset hound is the best kind of dog. But some people really like basset hounds, and they would breed basset hounds. What if you would breed goldfish instead of dogs? Are goldfish the best kind of animal? No, but some people like goldfish. That's why they breed them. And so, what would a virtuous person do or create? That's the question here. And it looks like someone who is virtuous could breed basset hounds or goldfish. And why would they do that? Because they like or love these creatures. And that brings us back to the virtues, right? Love is a kind of a virtue. Being loving is virtuous. And so if God is truly virtuous, then God would be a loving being, and then God would create worlds that God loves. So you might be able to say, why is there evil in the world? Well, God created this world because of the creatures, right, that God loves. And those creatures don't have to be the best. They could be inferior, and inferior creatures are going to choose to do evil sometimes. That's why there's evil in the world. So you have a God that's omnipotent and all good, and you have evil in the world. And that's what Robert Adams is doing here. And what he's really doing is he's saying, look, we don't know what good and evil are. We need to look at different theories of good and evil. And you can't just look at one theory and then say, oh, the problem of evil can't be solved, right? You've got to look at different theories. And he's saying some different theories about good and evil can be used to solve the problem of evil. And so, according to Adams, God doesn't need to create the best possible world. So just because this isn't the best possible world doesn't mean there isn't a God. That's his argument. And crucially, this argument, of course, hinges upon the nature of good and evil. And what he's arguing is that here's a better view of good and evil. And what I would like to say is that, Mackey's trying to use the problem of evil to argue that there is no God, but that's only going to work if we know what good and evil are. And if you look at philosophers and what they're saying about good and evil, they do not agree about what good and evil are. And we've seen two plausible moral theories, and there are more. And so there's a problem here. It looks like we're going to have to solve some problems in ethics before we can really talk about the problem of evil and how to really analyze it. And so that's kind of where we are with the problem of evil. And if you want to solve some problems in ethics, or at least read about them, you can take a introduction to ethics course, which is one of the courses at your college.